It's got a John Carpenter vibe, and luckily for us, we're going to be talking a little bit about John Carpenter later. But before that, hello, my name is Henry Confidential. That is John Marr. This is There Will Be Horror. It's going to be an interesting one today because a collective set of movies that are varying in quality. And but before we get to that, how you feeling today, buddy?
I'm feeling good, man. I mean, I know we're live now, right? But we just taped a bunch of matches for There Will Be Trivia. So, I mean, definitely you got to check it out. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's really getting good. And I think it's going to get even better because we went through almost through our first round of matches. We're tweaking things a little bit. So it'll be even better on the second run. That's it. It's been a day. And a day where we did that. We watched some of these movies. I think you watched one of them yesterday and two of them today. I plowed through all three of them today. I mean, I'd seen two of them before, so it was revisiting. I have different opinions now revisiting those movies, and then seeing the new Firestarter for the first time. But how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Like you said, we recorded those matches. I had a long day at work, and then the gym, traveling on Monday. On Monday is always funny because that's the day where we always do it. But that's always the day I drive an hour away each side to Michigan, so it's always a lot of driving plus the gym plus. Ironically, we record a lot of There Will Be Trivia on Mondays as well, so Mondays are a busy day. So but this was a fun one, and it's another light week where we've been talking a lot of easy ones the last couple of weeks because we're going to really delve into some heavy ones. I feel like over the summer, and obviously more into closer to Halloween. But first time watches on all three of these for me. Obviously for one of them because it's brand new. But so this was obviously from the remake of Firestarter, which is a remake of Firestarter, which is an adaptation of Stephen King. So we decided to throw in another Stephen King adaptation in Graveyard Shift. So might as well just jump into Graveyard Shift because I feel like talking about two of the same movie of a remake, it's going to get a little repetitive. So we'll kind of do a back and forth, kind of comparing the two. So before we get into that, we'll talk about Graveyard Shift. So Graveyard Shift, I'll let you kind of take it away because this was your idea. Just generally speaking, what are your thoughts on this movie and like what made you want to go with this one today?
If we go over like there was like a huge boom of like Stephen King adaptations that started like he did The Shining and obviously Christine was early 80s and then right after that there was like a tear of like they tried to adapt so much stuff of his and they didn't care about the length of the story. They didn't care. Obviously it's always better to adapt novels in most cases, but Graveyard Shift is an 18-page story from Night Shift, and the story really only covers. I think it's really they adapted kind of into like maybe 10 minutes of the movie is centered around the actual plot of the story, but they expanded it they fleshed it out into a pretty decent story with some pretty decent characters. Is this movie like a masterpiece? Is it like one of my top 10 horror? No. Is it like a fun movie? I think it's fun. It's not even fun to the point that like I hit the like button on Letterboxd, but like it was fun. And there's fun characters. There's my favorite staple of Stephen King adaptations. You have people who have no business doing New England accents, horrible New England accents. And honestly, I would say for Graveyard Shift, the high point, the strongest thing in Graveyard Shift is the creature work, the creature animatronics, or whatever they did. I think that actually was a human being in that costume. Are fantastic.
It's gooey and gross, so it could have been anything.
And obviously, a lot of people are afraid of rats. Like that's like a widespread fear. Yeah. So I'm not afraid of rats, but I can imagine if somebody who had is like squeamish or like has the heebie-jeebies about rats, show them this movie. They will vomit and run away.
Well, honestly, you could honestly love rats, but because it gets real gross at the end, that you would vomit anyway. This is a movie that I'm not gonna lie. The very first 20-30 minutes, I had no idea where it was going, and I had no idea what to expect. And they really took their time setting up, this scummy shift and this job, and this what is it, a textile plant, right?
Yep, textile plant.
Yeah, dealing with the cotton or the whatever they're doing, the machines. And then you got the rats in the background. You got the one guy toying with the rats. When he throws it in there and it busts it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's gonna be one of those types of movies, okay. And then you got the boss kind of being a weirdo and all of his stuff that he's doing. And like I said, I didn't know exactly what they're going, but then the third act or the climax, really not even tie the third act, but just the climax where then it gets balls to the walls. Wild. I was like, all right, I don't hate this movie because spoiler, I didn't like it, but I will say the third act saved it from being like trash. Like it's it's still technically not good. Like, I'm still going to be negative on it, but the third act is what made me not technically hate you for recommending it. So
Right. Like I'm saying, like
that's
from
the point.
in my ratings, like I have it at like a straight 2.5 out of 5. Like I mean, there's so many. There's a lot of things in this movie that I like. I like Brad Dourif. I think he's freaking passable to great in everything he does. I like Andrew Divoff. This is actually a weaker role for Andrew Divoff, you know, as like he's the Wishmaster and he's the bad guy in Toy Soldiers, and like he's always pretty good too.
Yeah.
He was on Lost. Stephen Mocht is great. Accent is horrible. Stephen Mocht is great. And like all the other big characters who really haven't been in any other movies, but like there's a lot of people that show up. You're like, oh, these guys are all cool. They're all cool character actors I recognize. But there's a lot of familiar faces. And if you like Brad Dourif just going over the top, because that character, the exterminator character, was it Cleveland, whatever? He's the best character in the movie, like hands down, I would say.
I mean, yeah, he's one of those actors where he just, I mean, he's you know him by name for a reason. And fun fact behind the scenes, when I was like, oh look, Fred Ward, you're like, oh, not Fred Ward. It looks just like him though.
yeah. Stephen Mock does look like Fred Ward. I think, especially at that time period. The funny thing is, like Tremors and this movie came out in the same year, and Fred Ward is in Tremors.
Yeah.
So like, and they look almost exactly alike. They have that same like, you know, like they look like they're like older John Barenthals.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, with the nose, it kind of
that nose has been broken more than once.
Yeah. Yeah. So the third act of this movie, like I said, that's what saved it, because that's where the horror really like came into, like it had some, you know, wannabe tension and stuff. You know, the directing's not great, the acting's serviceable, but like the third act is when it got to a point I'm like, all right, now we're getting into like The Fly and The Thing and the, like you said, the practical, you know, animatronics person, however it was. So this movie had a budget of, let's see, 10 million, which it's actually more than I would have expected, to be honest, because there's, you know, it's not many locations, you know, not big actors, but you know, if you had to guess, how much do you think this made worldwide?
Well, I do know the answer because I'm probably on the same page as you. It made like over 11 million, under 12 million. So they made their money back with a little bit of money left over. Yeah, I'm trying to, I got to imagine most of the money probably went into the sets, like because like the basement / cavern set pieces, and just like there was a ton of blood. Like there was blood in the water, and then the creature work. I'd say that's probably where all the money went. I can't imagine this was like a lengthy, ridiculous shoot, but I think most of the money you're going to see that creature work, like the bat creature, is easily the greatest thing in the movie. And the kills are like they're not especially like drawn out or gory. They're actually pretty much, there's a lot of like kind of technically off-screen kills in this movie. A lot of people just being dragged away for the most part,
gobbled up, and
yeah. And then there's or they get thrown into the freaking threshing machine or whatever. But like I said, like not a bad movie. I think you would classify this as something I would throw on if a chick was over, which is totally fine. I would totally buy that, especially if she's afraid of rats and she's like, oh, I can't look. Do that if she's afraid of rats. Do that. This is the movie to do that with. And
if she never calls you back, blame John.
That's right.
So you have a scapegoat out of the way. So yeah, this is one of those ones where, like you said, it's around that era where Stephen King adaptations are just kind of coming and going, and they're just doing their thing. How did you phrase? You're like, it's just that era of all the Stephen King movies just essentially feel the same and look alike, and like it's like
people were just like I mean, with the success of like Carrie and The Shining and Christine, like people just started like going berserk and trying to pick any property they did, and like I would say Graveyard Shift falls squarely in the middle of all of them. Like, you know, some are worse, like, you know, like they're, you know, Maximum Overdrive, or like, you know, The Mangler, or even to some extent Children of the Corn are probably like, you know, not as good as Graveyard Shift. And of course the movie we're talking about later also came before Graveyard Shift, and it's also better. So with that string of movies, with Carrie, The Shining, Christine, and Firestarter, there was like this big scramble. Like, let me get any property. And they weren't, at that point, they weren't even adapting novels. They were adapting short stories. They were adapting like novellas. Like, a lot of people don't realize that The Running Man is a Stephen King story. He wrote it under a different name, but that is also a Stephen King story. Stand By Me is a Stephen King story. There's a lot. Like, there's stuff that you don't even realize that he wrote that was adapted into films you probably like. And then there's a lot of movies that he wrote that adapted movies that absolutely suck, like The Lawnmower Man. You know, like it's all over the place.
Yeah, so I'm obviously you could tell this movie didn't really have a master filmmaker at the helm. Ralph S. Singleton. This is his only movie, and he did 2 episodes of Cagney and Lacey. TV series before.
He got to work with Tyne Daly. Wow, what a legend.
Yeah, it's just one of those where it's like you can that's what separates movies like that and like Carrie and The Shining and the other adaptations of the master filmmakers. And honestly, that's if I had to guess why some adaptations stand out versus others, honestly, the filmmaking or specifically the story. So if they're grasping at straws for a story and they don't have a master filmmaker behind it, then obviously you're not going to have a great movie. And if you have a great story or a master filmmaker like The Shining and Carrie and movies like that, then obviously you're those are the ones that stand the test of time. So it's one of those interesting ones where it's like, sure, if you're a completist and you want to watch different Stephen King adaptations, I would recommend it because it's not like god awful, but it's obviously not top tier. So you do this above other ones that you.
Yeah, I think what might have actually made this better is a lot of Stephen King material was also adapted into anthologies, like most of the first Creepshow, part of Creepshow 2, and all of Cat's Eye were all Stephen King either original or adapted works, and those actually served better as shorter films. Right. And of course, there's also a lot of episodic TV shows that came much later that Stephen King, they're all adapted from Stephen King stories too. So I think a lot of people just made the mistake like everything needs to be a movie, not necessarily. A short story could just be a half-hour TV show, which I think people learned their lesson like 20 years after they made this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they did a little bit because they didn't overdo it. It's only an hour 26 minutes counting credits. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's not over. Clearly they don't have an elaborate story, but yeah. So 2 stars for me. It's not good, but also I didn't hate myself for watching it. It's one of those where it's like that's why we do this show, so I can step out of my comfort zone and take chances. And yeah, I didn't completely hate it, and I had a fun time thinking that Stephen Mock was Fred Ward the entire time. All right, so this is going to be a little different than usual. So since we're doing both versions of Firestarter, we're kind of just going to talk about them at the same time and just kind of go back and forth and compare and just review and compare the movies and kind of distinguish our experiences on both of them. So I'll start off with the original. Well, obviously it's the first time for both of them because Firestarter 2022 is new. But the first Firestarter, I'm not going to lie, going into this movie, I, for the longest, never knew what to expect. I thought it was either going to be super cheesy. Because, the poster, in the context of the film, that the scene of, her with the hair, blowing and all that stuff, it's cool. And it's I wouldn't say necessarily iconic, but it, has that type of feel. But on the poster, it kind of looks cheesy and just super, bland and, not knowing, for example, Carrie, where you have the blood all over. At least there's some context of, potential what you could get, whereas in this one you have no idea. Oh, I'm just doing things with my mind. The effects are pretty cool, dude. Blowing people up and it's practical explosions. Obviously, the transitions of getting there, you can tell those are a little dated, but that doesn't bother me because the actual practical effects, she's literally throwing fire bombs, dude.
Fireball, heat-seeking fireballs, and this is 1984. It was probably filmed in 83, but heat-seeking fireballs, people, it's crazy. And we were talking a little bit about it earlier. The amount of stuntmen they set on fire in this movie is berserk. It's so many burn stunts in this movie. It's really great.
Fun fact. So everyone I follow on Letterboxd has a negative review of this, except for one who has it at 3 stars, and I'm honestly flabbergasted. I went in with low expectations, but how did no one ever tell me that this movie was Logan before Logan? This is literally a father-daughter road trip mutant movie running away from the man who's trying to get them back, who they experimented. You know what I mean? This is literally Logan. What are we talking about? The story is awesome. You know what I mean? It's exactly what you want. And it's a lot of fun. The corporation, what is it? DSI?
DSI the shop, yeah.
DSI the shop. They have their own creepy factor. There's enough it doesn't over explain who they are, so it doesn't overdo the Matrix sequels where it's over. There's still a little bit of intrigue, but they do enough so it's not completely out of nowhere. We'll get it out of the way now. George C. Scott's white, but hey, it is what it is. Let's just put it this way: him in the movie is good.
He's so good. I just wish they had Wes Studi was available, I'm sure. He'd have been
Or
fine.
I would have been cool. Just give him a different character name. You know what I mean?
True. Oh yeah, just make him a different character.
Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be Native American as a character.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing about that character that says, "Hey, I need to be Native American," other than the source material.
In the source material, yeah, and they brought some of the source material into the movie, like when he's talking about his justification of how he's gonna like be with her and like kill her so he can like experience her power and take it out into the spirit realm. Like that's how like your stereotypical, I guess, Native American character would talk if if they're totally into it. But just seeing George C. Scott deliver those lines was awkward to me. When I was a little kid, it obviously didn't dawn on me, but in the current like kind of political climate, I'm like, yeah, it's a little weird. And then also a lot of his lines come off as just like pedophile rapey too.
Yeah, I definitely was getting a pedophile vibe. I'm glad it never I'm glad it never went there. But I was getting nervous that it might have became that, but it didn't. It was like a more of a ritual sacrifice thing, which I'm cool with. I'm cool with that because of like you said, even taking the Native American like aspect out of it, I'm still okay with like having that satanic or cultist like behavior. I'm totally cool with that. Yeah. So in conjunction with the remake, the character is Native American, I'm assuming,
Yeah, he is. Yep, yeah. Definitely is.
And but the difference is he is I'm just gonna call him a mutant because there's no other way to really describe it. He is a mutant, and he is not technically a bad guy. He gets hired to like find her, and you know what I mean? It's really the lack of motivation in the remake is really what separates that connection. Because even if the creepiness aside, all those scenes of George C. Scott pretending to be John, being the maid, essentially the housekeeper, and like cleaning up the room and like starting to and really like infiltrating Charlie's character.
He gaslights Charlie into thinking he's a good guy. Yeah.
And it's one of those where it's like it's super creepy, but like when you really know his motivation, especially by the end, like take all the creepy stuff out. Like it's actually. It's patience, you know what I mean? Like you don't know exactly how long they're on the facility. Like it goes through some time, you know what I mean? And I really did dig that. And it's one of those where it's like the first hour was awesome, like awesome for me personally. The next like half hour I was like, all right, let's see where it goes. And then the third act paid off for me personally that I accepted the slow, deliberate pacing of that, especially after watching the remake where it had none of that. And I'm going to be honest, I did enjoy the remake. But everything that I was either unsure about on the original or was like, oh, maybe I'm just, enjoying this for a first time watch. No, the remake solidified. No, I really like the original. So it's one of those where it's like, yeah, it's definitely missing a lot. It felt weightless. You know what I mean? Even though I did enjoy it for what it was, the potential was there. It felt weightless. But you personally, you hated this movie. So tell me why.
I hate the remake, and I thought about it a little bit. I'm kind of trying to figure like where this movie came from. Like obviously, like the original Firestarter, it runs a little bit longer. I think it's close to 2 hours. It's just under 2 hours. This remake is like your typical Blumhouse. We got to make this a 90-minute movie, and like so they cut what's in that half hour they cut out. What's in that half hour they cut out? Every piece of humanity between like Drew Barrymore and David Keith.
Yep.
Every piece of like character building of John Rainbird. And then they added in. Well, they first of all they course corrected the things that were wrong. They took away all that weird pedophile stuff, and they made the character Native American. I was like, okay, cool. All the set pieces are there. They actually fleshed out the mother character a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen more of Heather Locklear in the original. They fleshed her out a little bit more. But really, like that was it. That's all they did. So they had everything set up, and then they just raced through this movie. They basically, and there's no way to really shit on the movie without spoiling a little bit of it. Like in the original, it makes sense. Like, they eventually, like, Rainbird stalks them and tranquilizes them and captures them. Like that's exactly right. In the remake, they just kind of like, they have technology to block
the eyes,
to block the father, Zac Efron's psychic abilities. Okay, that's like a Deus Ex Machina to like just wipe that whole. That's wiped out for the rest of the movie, except for the unfortunate plot point at the end, how everything resolves. So, and then Charlie runs away, and now all of a sudden she's like John Rambo, like living in the woods, eating berries in the stream. She knows where to go. She walks all the way to DSI. Get the fuck out of here! That's ridiculous. Like, yeah, she's 10 years old. Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. I'm sitting there like, get the hell out. And then she goes in there, just infiltrates. She's friggin' like, She's Ethan Hunt all of a sudden. She's like infiltrating the facility. She's slooping around. Get out of here. It was just like, I had to suspend disbelief too much. The original Firestarter did it right. It all makes sense. She should be in the facility because she was captured. She's not going to infiltrate the facility.
We're all defended on that. Is they actually do that? What the remake did differently than the original is they say, hey, obviously you're our kid. We pass down some of our powers. You know what I mean? Our mutant genetic gene.
Yeah.
So it's like so the fact that not only does she have the Firestarter ability, but she also has the telepathy and honestly, whatever her mom did,
she's telekinetic. Like she was, because like when Rainbird's walking in the hallway, she's throwing all the pictures at him and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't really know how to phrase that, but yeah, so telekinetic and telepathic, so yeah. But so she's able to do that, so it kind of gives her that. The one scene that I actually really did like is in the car with the one agent when she was like, he's like, oh, I'm just a tech guy or whatever he says, and I don't have a gun.
I don't have a gun, yeah.
Yeah, and then he pulls out the gun, and she's like, you lied, and it's one of those things where it's like, she was already on the fence because obviously she's in defensive mode, but like, that stuff, like, so this is why I like this character in general, regardless of how we approach it for either movie is this movie. I literally wrote this in my review. I was like, this is X-Men Origins Firestarter. This is the Logan plot line, or at least the original is the Logan plot line meets the Fire Fist from Deadpool 2 Origins and like backstory. You know what I mean? And it's if I don't know the success of this movie and the odds of it getting a sequel are low. But in theory, if they were to turn this into a sequel and they turned her into a supervillain like Brightburn and they went about it that way, I could see it because obviously this movie didn't do it as well. But the original did a great job of setting her up to be just a rampage villain. Obviously, she goes back to Irv and the family, but she still. I
also like the Irv character better in the original. I mean, they just shoehorned that whole like, oh, he's the reason why his wife is paralyzed. Like okay, like meanwhile he's just he's basically acts like a drunk asshole like the entire time.
I didn't mind that because that was the first time she really was able to totally use her telepathic abilities, and it kind of hinted at that a little bit. So I didn't mind that, and then also like the first time that in the original Irv when he was like, oh, I feel like an asshole because I didn't believe you. But in this one, he's a drunk asshole, and he said he's like, oh, obviously I'm gonna call the cops and I'm mad at you, blah blah blah. So like I'm okay with it. Like once again, everything about this movie is fine for me. Just none of it is well fleshed out. It all is weightless. So it's like, ironically, I would already want a remake of this new approach. You know what I mean? Like let's just do this approach better. You know what I mean? Let's just pretend this one didn't happen. And
I'd have rather they cleaned up the original.
I would have been.
I don't need like a Gus Van Sant shot for shot remake of Firestarter, but like they definitely could have just cast this the same exact way they did and done the plot the same exact way and had a fucking banger of a movie. But they chose to Blumhouse it up and condense it, and it suffers bad. Even the effects are bad. Like pound for pound, the 84 Firestarter special effects blow away the 2022.
Pun intended.
Yeah, fire. Like there's legit CGI when you don't need it's just fire. You don't need CGI. It's just fire. It's just fire. Come on. Like with the amount of lives they put at risk in 1984, you'd think, come on, man.
What they had the opportunity to essentially rip off Carrie with all the bullying and stuff that they're doing, and just have her just fuck up her entire school, and then make the climax at the school. You know what I mean? Like,
that's also an unrealistic part of the movie. The fact that she blows up the entire bathroom is like, you can go home. If you blew up a bathroom in a school in 2022, the freaking FBI would put you in a black site. That's ridiculous.
I'll agree with. I'll give you that one. That's wonky. So, what are your thoughts on the two dads, Keith David? I'm just kidding, David Keith and Zac Efron. What are your thoughts in comparison of the two?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Like as a dad, right? Like I watched both these movies today. I have a daughter younger than Drew Barrymore or this whatever the other girl's character is. Yeah. David Keith sells it way more. Like that dude's a dad. I feel it. Zac Efron, I get a few moments where he feels like a dad, but like they kind of cut the movie down so much.
Oh, it's not McKenna Grace. I thought it was McKenna Grace. It's Ryan Kiera Armstrong. Why did I think McKenna Grace? Was she maybe the original? I was wondering why it didn't look like her. I'm sorry, that's on me.
It's Fred Ward. No, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but David Keith, just all the moments he has with Drew Barrymore, it's real. It's real. Like, but Zac Efron with the other girl, I mean, not really, and she's kind of wooden. Whereas Drew Barrymore just crying at the drop of a hat, every goddamn scene. Like I feel it, and then you kind of get robbed. In the original Firestarter, you get that great scene. Rainbird shoots Andy, and like he's wounded. He's clearly dying, and he's like, "You got to burn it all down. Do it for me. Do it for me." You don't even they take that from you in the remake. You don't get that.
Yeah, he literally burns. She actually burns her dad. You know what I mean? And
he makes her, because she's the only one not wearing the contact lenses. He makes her burn him to death. It's like, what's going on?
I mean, in the context of the motivation, I get it, where it's like, hey, he's willing to sacrifice himself to save her. So I mean, I get it, but once again, it's the the idea and the concept works for me. It's the execution and the approach to the final product is what is the.
I can give you that. I can definitely give you that.
So it's like I'm told that's essentially my entire thought on the entire of this movie, where it's like, I'm cool with everything they do in the movie. Theoretically, it's just the approach. And I do like the performances. You know, obviously I prefer Drew Barrymore's character because she has, you know, she truly has that, you know, that little kid, you know, and sympathy that you want to give. You know, she definitely feels like an innocent little girl who is. She was
a great child actress. I mean, she's still a good actress, but she's like one of those actresses that was just better as a kid for some reason. Like she had tons of depth. The newer girl, like it was just like she played it like a sociopath. The whole movie.
Well, so that's another thing. That's why I was kind of hinting at the Brightburn thing, where it's like they definitely teased a lot of like, I like it. It felt good. You know what I mean? And they even say in the trailer, it's like, if you're gonna do that, go all the way. You know what I mean? Turn her into a villain. That's how you could separate the Firestarter. The whole bit of 84 is like, hey, I don't want to do this, but this is the only way I can survive.
Right.
The remake, fuck that. I'm gonna burn some shit up. You know what I mean? Like the first time, like it could have been one of those things where maybe she has an abusive parent, which would be relevant at the time. Like if they're gonna try and be social, let the dad be abusive. It's like, oh, you stop being, you know, all that stuff. You know what I mean? And then she fucks him up, and now she's a bad person. You know what I mean? There's ways you could have done it and like really separate stuff.
That would have been interesting. And like actually, you just reminded me of like literally the dumbest part of the movie. Like when the one lady in the hallway is like begging for her life, but she's kind of trying to distract her while the people sneak up on her, and she realizes it and she kills the guys. Then she looks at her and she goes, "Liar, liar, pants on fire," and then kills her. I'm like, go home.
Come on,
go home.
It's a little kid.
Go home.
A little kid's gonna say that. You cannot.
Well, then why wasn't she dropping like Freddy Krueger one-liners the entire goddamn movie? Like it's just one time.
Her origin to being Freddy Krueger. That's
she's the reason she burned Freddy Krueger. That's why he is the way he is, because like he was trying to touch her and he burned her. I mean, she should have been dropping she should have been dropping like Commando Schwarzenegger one-liners on everybody. If that's what the movie was going to be, that's how it should have been. That I would have been like, okay, you know what? At least they're leaning into it. I would have gone hobo with a shotgun, whole hog on the movie then. If that's the way it was going to be.
Next thing you know, she hits some snap, crackle, pop.
No. Okay, I would watch. I would not have shit on the movie that bad if every time she killed somebody, it was like a pun on fire. Like a little hot under the collar. Like that would be good. I would be fine with that.
Oh Jesus. Yeah. So I'm really glad that I watched the original. Obviously I don't know the longevity in terms of how it's gonna carry over like tomorrow in the future, but like in terms of like first time watches for like horror movies, this is already high up there. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm really happy with this because I'm not a dad, but I get emotional and like connected to like these types of stories. Like the very first time I watched Paper Moon, it had a similar vibe of like a dad and a girl on the road trip, and they're building their connection. Obviously, they're already father and daughter in this movie, but you're getting used to their connection, how they're able to like really bounce off each other and like combined the father-daughter aspect, but is also the on the run mutant aspect as well. You know what I mean? So it's like I was able to connect with it. So like the whole time she's like, I want my father. Like you really feel that every time, you know what I mean? Because it's earned. It takes its time. It really builds that relationship, like you said earlier. And I really like the back and forth whenever that's how you do dream sequences, like for this, that you do exposition with dream sequences for this, because like his guilt and his horrors of like what he went through, like, and that's how you're like, oh, previously on Firestarter. You know what I mean? Like it really did a good job of doing
that. The remake was kind of linear, and then in the title card, it was just like that flat, that choppy, like Saw. Like
I did like that. I don't know.
Which worked. It worked,
yeah.
But like but it does take. It's another thing that they just stripped away from the original. You know, that it's kind of like basically Firestarter 2022 was just it was kind of like just making a car faster. You know, like what can we drop out of this car to make this car go faster?
Yeah.
What can we take out of this car to make this car go faster? Like it's like, and then at the end, you have an unsafe, shitty vehicle.
Yeah. You know? And so I guess now we can get on some technical stuff. Obviously, you hinted with like the CG, but in terms of like the camera work and like the direction, this is a movie, the remake at least. This is a movie that I really didn't even like the way it looked. Like that's honestly my real negative flaws of it. Is like I feel like it was dark a lot of the times. It didn't even like think about it. This movie is about fire. That's reds, orange, and yellows. This movie should pop, and it just doesn't. You know what I mean? It's just one of those.
It's dark, yeah.
Like there's that one scene where Zac Efron's character is literally in the dark, and like I was like, oh shit, because I watched on my phone, obviously, you know, to get some of these movies. I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch it, you know, I'm watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the big screen for my show Wednesday, but for these movies, I'm watching these on the phone. No, I'm just kidding. But this one was like I was watching on my way home, and you know, I had the brightness all up. I'm like, shit, did something go wrong? It's like, no, that was just the lights were off. That one scene in the house when he was dealing with Rainbird. But there's just the lack of like contrast. Like it really nothing popped. But John Carpenter's score was cool.
Yeah. It was cool to see him pop up.
It makes me wonder either is he getting the itch to like maybe make a movie, or is he just gonna flip to composing? And I'm totally cool with that. If he just became a full-time composer, let's go, John Carpenter. Let's get some work. I want to see John Carpenter score the next Scream. You know, let's get into there. Let's get.
Oh, that'd be cool. Just have him. You have just Craven handing it off to Carpenter. Essentially, eventually, I don't know. He's definitely talented. Obviously, like he's the brains behind the Halloween theme and everything. So, like he's definitely got an ear for it. No pun intended. Like he knows how to score a horror movie. The one weird musical choice of Firestarter 2022 is when they introduce Rainbird, and it just cuts to that like weird, he's like all of a sudden he's like an action movie. It's like that weird techno beat, like bam, 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 bam. I'm like, okay. This guy's cool. He's got an upside down cross tattoo on his back. He's got to be a badass.
I feel like that was them trying to like pay homage to the 80s. You know what I mean? Trying to give it that 80s.
It was like a scene out of Cobra, like Stallone's Cobra.
Yeah, exactly.
Like all of a sudden, like what is this doing here? Yeah.
So all in all, you hated the remake, but how do you feel overall on the original? Now that
the original is like a 3.5, 4 for me. I mean, I docked some points just for that really weird problematic stuff. And I'm not that I'm even that type of person, but just watching it makes me feel uneasy. But I do love George C. Scott's performances. Otherwise, I love the whole movie. Otherwise, it's a like for me. I have it at 3.5 right now. It could go as high as a 4 because I do love the chemistry between David Keith and Drew Barrymore. The remake is a 1. Like the remake is just I feel like they took everything, they fixed the problems, then did nothing good with it, and then stripped away all the goodness from the first movie and deorganized the plot to a point that like it took me out of the entire movie. And if they're going to turn this into a trilogy, I will watch all 3, and I promise you I'll shit on all 3. And Stephen King will probably be dead by the time all 3 of them come out because this will have killed him.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't know exactly how it's going, the longevity of the original, but as of right now it's a 4, but how I do my rating is it's 4-star, and then I separate 4 and 5, and to like, cause I want that to like really have that gap of like a favorites, like it transcends ratings. And honestly, I'm obviously you know, kind of jumping the gun here, but I could feel this jumping in there, dude. Like if this becomes like a yearly watch because of just that emotional connection, like I really feel emotion.
If you have a little girl or something down the road, it's gonna hit you different.
Exactly. I have a lot of nieces, you know what I mean? So like,
I know. I was gonna say that. Yeah.
So it already like, you know, I'm already like halfway there living on a prayer. So like, yeah. So if it becomes like a yearly thing, like I could see this being a favorite because it just, you know, that hits, and because it holds up. Like you said, other than the problematic stuff, which doesn't bother me none because it's not as in your face. It's more of like if you're really paying attention and you're really reading into it, then maybe. But it's really not as in your face, especially by the end.
I'm sure most people are like, why is George C. Scott have a ponytail? What the hell's going on with this ponytail?
The remake, I'm giving it 3 stars because, like I said, nothing about it was like bad per se. It was just hollow, so it's serviceable. It's like what they're going for. What they were going for was serviceable. I just wish they did more. You know what I mean? And honestly, it's one of those where it's like I could see myself watching it again. I'm not gonna lie, especially like if they do end up getting the green lighting, a sequel to this. I'm gonna go back and watch it again, and I'm definitely obviously gonna want to give it a shot on my TV now just to see if it pops better or whatever. But I liked it.
Just given its box office performance so far, I don't know if it's gonna make it. Like I think that. It didn't even make half its budget back yet.
Well, and that's okay because like the ending sets up like the possibility of a sequel, but like nothing about it is like in your face, like, oh yeah, next time on, we'll see you next week. You know what I mean?
It's not like Buckaroo Banzai where they were basically promising you a sequel and nothing ever happened. We're still waiting.
Yeah, still waiting.
Yeah, still waiting for that sequel, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't hate it, but it's one of those also when I see like all the reviews were just half star. It's like, all right, I feel like you guys are crazy, and I don't like you guys. So yeah.
Here's the last thing I'll say about the Firestarter remake. I think that if you've never read the book and you've never seen the original, and you don't know anything about it, you just went into this movie blind, I think you probably would like it. But if you have that like basis of the book and the other movie to build on, you're gonna feel like you were shit on, and that's kind of like where I'm coming from.
That's fair.
I think if we walked into it like, oh, okay.
And well, I mean, I technically went in after watching the original. I almost did consider watching the remake first for some reason. Like, I don't know what like logic that is, just especially because I knew I had to watch both. But I did consider it for half a second. I decided to go with the original first, and I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Maybe down the road, I start to think about it, and the gripes get to me. But if I just don't ever think about it again, I'm cool with 3 serviceable.
Yeah, but I've read the book and I've seen the original probably 3 or 4 times. So like I have like I guess I'm just kind of stuck. This is the plot of Firestarter. Like this is the plot. Like this is the plot of the Grapes of Wrath. What did you do to it? Like that's kind of like where it is for me. That's like in the Grapes of Wrath, if they were going from California to Oklahoma, I'm like no, they're supposed to be going the other way. That would bother me.
That is completely fair. So yeah, this was a fun one. Definitely a vast difference in quality and style. So yeah, Graveyard Shift, 1984's Firestarter and 2022's Firestarter. You can catch us every Monday here. Definitely going to be either sticking with the new releases next week. We're going to be covering Men. And so we decided Midsommar, and what was the third one we decided to go with?
Another A24 movie, I believe, right? Was it I don't remember.
Under the Skin.
Under the Skin, that's right. Yeah, so we're doing an A24 triple feature next week. That should be really good.
Yep.
I know a lot of people love Midsommar, so I'm sure I can't wait to talk to you about that. And Men, I have a feeling, this is my bold prediction. I have a feeling the movie is nothing like the trailer. I have a feeling that trailer is absolutely misleading.
And knowing Alex Garland, if it was a different director, I would be like, that's just what they're going for with the day and age. But because it's Alex Garland, he's never really done anything like that. I agree with you. So I feel like it is. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's a subplot, but we'll see and we'll get into. I'm going to go in open-minded and no expectations because that's where you set yourself up for failure. But so definitely tune in for that next week. Make sure you turn on post notifications for this channel because we don't have a set time for when we go live. It will be every Monday. Barring any setbacks, but yes, we never know exactly what time.
So just sit by your computer; it'll come. Just sit by your computer, make popcorn, brew some drinks, and just wait. And then when that
in the background while you wait for
it. When that thing goes off, just come and join us.
Oh yeah, that is where we can say both versions of Firestarter are currently on Peacock, and Graveyard Shift is what was it? What did I watch that on? Tubi, maybe? No, Pluto. No, I've been watching a lot of.
We can find out we can find out where Graveyard Shift is. Let's find out for the people watching.
Amazon Prime. That's what it was.
Okay,
Amazon Prime,
cool.
Maybe. I knew I watched it on something, but I've been watching a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies lately, so I've been trying to find them on random, dark webs and stuff. But yeah, so that's gonna be fun. But speaking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, make sure you check out me and Austin Pessoa, which we're gonna be covering a horror finally again. Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I'm excited to talk about that one because I'm a big fan of that franchise. It's not quite Saw level for me or Screams, specifically, but I do enjoy that franchise, so I'm excited to talk about that. But make sure you like this video if you made it this far in the video because it just makes sense. Make sure you go follow John and myself on Letterboxd because we don't do crazy long in-depth reviews, but we definitely log movies all the time, and we like to have some fun ones.
And put your opinion on our reviews. I guarantee we respond to you. Just tell you you're an asshole. That's fine. Do that.
Or we'll agree with you because you'll say we're an asshole. We're like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably true.
That's
So,
right.
so with that said, my name is Henry Confidential. That is John Marr. Make sure you follow us on Letterboxd, subscribe to the channel, and be back next Monday because there will be horror.
Hard.
Boo.